Chat nailed it. That was an AI generated song. Welcome, everybody. Super excited to have you here. I'm Kevin McClelland, and I lead AI at Slalom. I'm here with two fantastic colleagues, Tamara Usher, who drives AI innovation, and Amelia Goodwin, who leads our adaptive organizations practice. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us. And as we get going here, let's pause for just a moment. This isn't meant to be just another corporate webinar. We want to cut through the noise and share simple, practical insights from our deep advisory experience with 3 easy A's with AI: accelerated engineering, AI agents, and adaptive teams. These are designed to help you unlock real business value and find ways to leap ahead in today's fast-paced world. So as we go along, we're going to look to keep things lively, straightforward, and interactive. We're going to have room for Q&A at the end, so if you have questions along the way, please ask them. Most of all, thank you for being here, and let's jump right in, starting with a quick video.
We will see more change in the next 10 years than we have in the last 100. Exponential advances in technology are disrupting how we work, the organizations we work at, and our entire world. Half of our technical skills may not be useful or relevant in just 2 or 3 years, and today's products will need to be reimagined just as fast. It's clear we can't rely on what we've always done and still survive, much less thrive. Alain de Botton once said, "Anyone who isn't embarrassed of who they were last year probably isn't learning enough." What will you be embarrassed of a year from now? How are you reinventing yourself and your organization to keep up with the technology revolution? How do all of us thrive? We must see the invisible, believe the unbelievable, and become comfortable with constant change. We must do more than adapt, we must become adaptive. In a world of exponential change, adaptability is our greatest edge. Let's grow it together.
In late 2024, we did an annual survey of 200 C-level executives, asking them how AI is showing up in their organizations. You see some of those results here, and let's pause and look at this. Nearly 70% of organizations are still in the early stages of their AI journey, while about 30% say they're further along. But even the so-called advanced groups often aren't seeing the full impact they'd hoped for. And the reason is that many are still in pilot mode, testing AI out, but not quite making that leap to large-scale adoption. If you think about how you're looking to unlock impact of AI in your organization, I'd pause and step back from the slide a little bit and ask everybody to think on your own. Is your organization running AI pilots? Are you still in that test phase, or are you really using AI to drive big business outcomes and unlock the kind of change that you're looking to get out of it? The message here is that if you are somebody who the answer comes back and says, "I'm in the early days," you are not alone. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what are some of those barriers that people look to overcome as they get going on that journey. As we flip to the next slide, please. So why are so many AI initiatives stalling out? It's not just about the technology. There are deeper execution barriers like leadership misalignment, unclear ROI, security concerns, and even talent gaps that can hold organizations back. I like to think of the situation, much like you see on the slides here, as being a bit like an iceberg. There's what we see on the surface when it comes to unlocking AI in our organizations. Lots of excitement, a lot of buzz, a lot of people trying it out. But then there's what lies underneath. There's a number of strategic barriers like cross-functional ownership and how to get alignment there, or even operational barriers such as security concerns, risk management, or the quality of our data and how it sits in different silos. As you think about getting off the ground and beginning your AI journey, the really quick reality check that I think we all have to consider is, have you ever been excited about an AI project only to run into budget cuts, misaligned priorities, or anything like what you see on this slide here that's holding you back? Because if you are, we're going to next get into a series of steps that we've found that can help get through those with a clean vision of how you can unlock value with AI. Next slide, please. Okay, so moment of truth. I'm a public school kid from a small town in a farming part of Washington State. I like to keep things incredibly simple in how I think about this, and AI on its surface is probably the least simple thing that any of us are dealing with at work. But the really important key to think about when it comes to AI is that it's not just about the technology. It's about bringing people and processes along for the ride, right? Anybody who's ever talked to a consultant in the last 25 years has heard people, process, technology. But it's true here, and it's truer than it's ever been before. So we like to use this occasion or this equation as a grounding point to bring that to life. The equation, as you see on the screen, goes technology plus humans equals value in its most simple form. The reason that we've landed on this and the reason that we're seeing this be able to bust through a lot of those barriers we saw in the previous slide is over the last 2.5 years, beginning when people got super enamored with ChatGPT and began playing with it and many of its contemporaries, we found that technology took over the mindset of many organizations. When we thought about AI and Gen AI in particular, it was tech, tech, tech. Then in 2024, we began to see the questions come up of where's my ROI? How do I unlock value from this? And so the conversation began, oh, well, technology will naturally unlock value, right? No, not all the way. The reality of it is that the organizations that are leaping ahead, that nearly 30% that we saw in the first slide I showed, they are taking technology and thoughtfully applying it to the way that humans work, looking at different departments, looking at different functions, thinking about skill sets, and saying, how can I start with what the humans do today to make life great for my customers, for my employees, for my stakeholders? How can I look at what they do and then find ways to apply the technology to that instead of leading with the technology and then trying to back into ways that it works for their people? The major takeaway here is that if you focus only on the tech, you end up with cool demos and no real ROI. But if we focus on the people, we get sustainable impact. That's where the magic happens. And to bring this to life and start talking about some examples, we're going to flip to the next slide here. So many of us as leaders in our organizations have talked over time about how do I balance short-term wins with long-term vision, right? AI is no different for that. But to help guide us along that journey, we came up with a 3-horizon model that talks about the notion of Horizon 1 with productivity, Horizon 2 with differentiation, and Horizon 3 with disruption. And to help make this real, I'm going to talk about this a little bit in the context of engineering, right? Because that's our example that we want to lead with today. It's the example that's getting the most traction in the market in terms of using AI to truly change what's happening. And it's an area that when we think about the powers in Gen AI models today, it's showing up really, really powerfully and really easily to support engineering functions. So what does it mean to focus on productivity with Gen AI when you think about engineering? This is the idea of how do I take tools that exist today, basically to use old language, how do I take off-the-shelf tools and give it to my people, right? Examples could include anything from GitHub Copilot to Amazon Q, to giving people licenses and subscriptions to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, pick your favorite flavor, right? But in productivity, what you're doing is you're giving the tools to the people and enabling them to explore on their own, build up capability and know-how, and realize personal benefits. But that's generally where it ends. You're seeing the benefits at an individual level. And as leaders of your organization, you are very naturally going to say, how do I begin to unlock bigger, sustained benefits for my organization? Glad you asked. That's how you move into the second horizon around differentiation. This is where, again, you're not getting into super crazy, sophisticated technology. You can use those same things that I was talking about earlier to drive specific change in a function. I'll share an example. We have several projects that we're working with right now that are looking at either GitHub Copilot or Amazon Q and asking themselves, how can I apply this very robust, well-supported tool in support of a part of my engineering lifecycle to get benefits? Think about the time from your business stakeholder saying, I want something, to the time that you've got an engineer-ready story that people can begin building on. Imagine a world where you can cut weeks or months off of that process through thinking about better ways of doing your SDLC, better ways of training your people. It is happening today, and it is unlocking incredibly powerful, interesting benefits for companies that do that. But that's not all. Tamara's going to talk a little bit about this later, but when you get into disruption, this is where we begin to play with agents, which is the biggest trend that we're seeing come to life this year. And I'm not going to steal Tamara's thunder because she can speak to it better than anybody I know, but that's where disruption really comes into play on the engineering front. So to summarize on this slide, think about this. If you only chase quick wins, you miss out on the disruptive potential of AI. But if you only focus on the far off transformation, you're never going to build momentum and get off the ground. Having this balanced view and plan is what's going to ultimately allow you to unlock enduring, sustained change and benefit in your organization. Now, to bring my section home, let's flip to the next slide here. We've invested a lot of time in Slalom over the last couple of years on this notion of accelerated engineering. We're helping clients reimagine how they build and manage their projects with AI-driven automation, AI tooling, and process and skill change, like I mentioned earlier. Why is this compelling and interesting? Particularly when you get to true changes to your SDLC, where you've got dev leads who are designing, deploying, and orchestrating fleets of agents who operate as virtual team members for their team, along with applying that in every part of your SDLC, you move beyond having the classic 10, 20, 30, 40% gains conversation to talking about multiples, right? And the reason we're able to do that is we're able to drive better collaboration, cut through complexity, and ultimately free up time for higher value work. And as a leader in your organization, imagine that world, a world where your technology teams are coming to you or your technology teams are going to your stakeholders and asking for more scope. I don't know about you, in my 20-some years of consulting, I've never seen that happen. It's typically, I don't have enough resources to do it. This is the move that can unlock that and allow you to get even more done. And it shows how AI, when integrated the right way, can drive real business outcomes through faster speed to market, reduced costs, and even happier teams. Now, remember, AI is not just about the technology. It's reshaping how businesses function, and that's where Tamara comes in. She's going to explore what happens when we start scaling AI beyond one or two teams and the real risks of inaction if we don't. So Tamara, I'm going to hand it over to you and carry over into your section.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And accelerated engineering is such an amazing spark. Those digital capabilities coming online faster and faster is just going to create all that differentiation and disruption. But the speed of agents, like no other. So we know 2025 is already the year of the agent. And why is it important that we're talking about this now, even though it still feels very much like innovation, is because it's happening now, right? Already with those engineers that are, generating code with GitHub Copilot, their repositories are filling up at the rate of 40% of their code is now written by AI. So we're almost ready to the point where we can unleash the agents. We're really starting to see this accelerate a lot. So why should we start to play and start to experiment with this opportunity? In the next slide, we'll see that this change is really, truly exponential. And what's going to happen very soon is if we're not, working on the AI integration into our everyday work, like we see with accelerated engineering or with using our AI chatbots to guide our everyday knowledge work in a more general purpose way, we're not going to be ready for what's coming next because that is going to just hit that exponential curve. And everything we're going to do to get that little catch-up boost is just not going to get us there. So we have to start today. We have to start experimenting, and we really do want to stay competitive. So if we're not doing this now, there is that risk of becoming obsolete. In the next slide, you'll see how we think about different AI applications. And it's across a spectrum of, those things are a little bit easier to adopt or to enable for the enterprise at large. And those things are a bit more of a higher lift. But we have to really be experimenting and innovating across this spectrum. And that includes the things kind of in the middle, which is our traditional AI and ML, which is also not gone away and actually becoming that much more faster as well. But then if we start to get to automation, the automation of yesterday that we used to work with is really starting to move into this more probabilistic space with agents and how we work with agents to really accelerate the work that we do in a scale that we've never seen before. So what is an agent and what does it look like? Well, let's look at an example on the next slide of a very specific process around writing. So this could be, writing content. Been talking about writing code, but this can be making sure that we're able to, create content to put scale out there in a way that is driving our business. Now, when we think about the definition of the agent, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. These agents should be able to plan and reason for themselves, as well as take action. And because the agents today are, best when they're quite narrow, we're going to look at agents at a task level. So when we see this writing process, we've got our search agent, the agent that's curating the content that we're interested in, writing our own content. The human in the loop here is, of course, important. We need to make sure we have that quality, that we're checking for errors, that we're bringing our voice into this. But then we continue on with the rest of the tasks in this final process end to end. Now, this is a multi-agent workflow where we're going to see agents working together. You might have orchestrators or different patterns where we're making sure that the content is the best it can be. Now, this definition of agents is important. This move to multi-agents is the next step, and we're already starting to see a lot of that again happening this year. On the next slide, we'll see a little bit about where these sweet spots are. We've already been doing a lot of work since the ChatGPT moment in general purpose LLMs and integrating those into our daily tasks. We added the context of our own enterprise data, creating the different chatbots that have our data as a part of those. Now we're moving into this more autonomous place, and this is very much what's possible today. But on the next slide, we're going to see that we're even starting to see a shift there, right? I spoke about multi-agents and the patterns that get the quality out of those because we've oriented them around tasks. But we're even starting to see this shift in our interaction model with agents. So where we're at right now in sort of this agentic, kind of maturity model is a level 2 where humans are designing the workflows because we understand the output and the outcome best. We're working with the agents to execute on those workflows. But the change here is us guiding those agents and giving them feedback, asking for maybe rework or to check work, to the flip side where we're starting to see the agents come and ask us, right? So more clarification on the task output, checking work, and really being that interaction that is two-way. That's a big leap even already this year and how we're interacting with these agents in our workplace. Now, these agents can be scaled to a massive quantity, right? That's interesting. We want to be sure that we get the good quality output. It is more probabilistic. It can have errors just like your humans can. Ideally, we've got governance processes in place that can deal with those and at scale. Now, these agents can be as little as 10 cents an hour to operate. Now, imagine that. Anywhere where you need capacity and scale, we need to be talking about agents. If we look at the next slide to bring in another view here, this is, from the CEO of Anthropic. He is already anticipating in software engineering because, of course, the Anthropic model is amazing at writing code that right now, 90% of coding tasks can be handled by agents. And within this year, the next 3 to 6 months, it's potentially all coding tasks. Now we're talking about a scale of code and digital capability that we've never seen before. I do have an example, though. On the next slide, I want to share with you a great example where we put this to the test. We implemented what we talk about as a fleet of analysts. These agents are tuned towards the data sources that they're looking at. In this case, we're talking about pricing strategy. So these agents are looking at economic indicators, competitive pricing, other pricing data that's in the ecosystem, and they are all tuned to that data source and elevating recommendations of actions for pricing strategists to take. Now we also have an orchestrator agent that's prioritizing those actions and really only elevating those to the humans that are the most pertinent or actionable. And what we've seen with this is this particular company was able to recover last year hundreds of millions of margin by adjusting prices in, say, inflationary parts of the world or other circumstances that would have largely flown under the radar. Well, because we have agents that we can put out there at scale to pay attention and elevate the best opportunities, we can now take action on some of those things that we might not have had the capacity to before. How do we do this? And I got one more slide just to talk about how to start thinking about agents, which is what we are describing as flow engineering. Your processes are incredibly important. You know how to deliver value through your value chain to your organization and to your customers. But those processes today are largely oriented around the screens and the systems and the humans that are doing that work. We have the opportunity to re-engineer, reinvent these processes almost completely. And there's some great ways to think about the patterns of doing that. Again, breaking those agents down into those tasks, looking at the role they play, the tools they'll need access to, the knowledge in your organization, the information that they'll need to get access to, and also how are we dealing with the governance, communication, and quality of orchestration. So we found great success with making sure we're reinventing processes so that they're ready to be agentic in their workflow. And that's the first step, but not the last step. So I will now pass it on to Amelia, because what we need to see with these processes is a change to the way that our humans are working and our organizations are adapting.
Great. Thank you, Tamara. With the idea of hundreds and thousands of agents out there doing and helping us with our work, it really gets down to, okay, how do we as people and as organizations absorb this? So I'm excited to be here to chat with you a little bit about what's this mean for our organizations? What's this mean for our teams? What's this mean for our leaders? And how do we lead in this? I like this quote because a mere year ago, it said something different. Today it says technology progress is compressing 100 years of advancements into 5 years. Last year that said 10. What we know about what is happening and what we can say for sure is this is the slowest it's ever going to be, and this is the worst this technology will ever be. It's only getting better. And so it's really upon us to figure out how do we make the most of it and implement it in our organizations in a safe and effective way that we can utilize and make the most of. And that really means we have to think about this very differently. It's not the change management of the past. And I've been doing this 25 plus years with clients and customers, and it is not the way we think about technology implementations that we always have. And next, I want to talk a little bit about that new mental model and how we think about this. There are some great things we can learn from our past and what we've done in technology implementations, and there's just some new things we have to think about. The first is our leadership teams and our leaders in our organizations really need to be thinking about that 6 month, 30 years. So we're borrowing from lots of different people here. One from Meta and Facebook's early days where really talked about, okay, we know what we can do in the next 6 months and where do we want to go in 30 years? And we would really challenge organizations right now to think about what Jim Collins wrote in Good to Great around BHAGs. You can do that in 6 months now. When you have fleets of agents that can go find hundreds of millions of margin that you're losing, there's different ways in which you can absolutely be working and doing something different. And then at that same time, taking from exponential organizations, we need to be thinking about 30 years out. What is that massive transformative purpose that we're about, that we want this technology to help serve, and what we want to do in the world for we want our organizations to serve in the world. So it is thinking about this very different. It's scenario based. It's understanding all the different potentials that could be happening. And then once we see those signals happening in the world, we know where to focus and where to spend our next 6 months so that we're continuing to stay future focused and relevant. The next is unlearn, relearn, and iterate faster than our competition. We're gonna, in a second, spend a little bit more time in this because this is the first thing we all can do. And this is where I think we're kind of stuck at that starting gate. And this is because it's different. We have often thought about technology as, okay, I'm gonna do some training and I'm gonna learn how to use this. And that's not what this is. This is an ongoing iteration, and we have to continually be learning with it. So it's not a one moment time of learning the new CRM system, so to speak. So this is a different mindset that we have to put in the organization as well as within our teams and how we think about that. The next is decision velocity, decision velocity being the new competitive moat. And I'd ask, how fast are decisions made in your organization? What we're going to see is we are going to need organizations and leaders to really think about who's making decisions, when those decisions are being made, where are humans involved, what can our bots and our agents do for us? Where do we want to say, no, humans are involved in this? And how can we go faster? It really is about us being able to use this technology to create the better products and services to take market share first. And that is really what's going to be about moving and iterating very fast. With that comes how we work with this. We talked about agents and humans in the loop, and that is that human-machine collaboration. And we're going to dig into that a little bit more in a second. And when we think about how we work, agents coming in, new skilling, that means our organization models are going to shift. If you think about it, the organization models we have of today existed since the Industrial Revolution. This is a new moment in which we are going to start seeing more fluid models. We're already starting to see compressing of models, meaning taking middle layers out of organizations and flattening so we can make decisions faster. We're already starting to see more silos coming down and more fluid across different value chains within organizations. This is going to be a bigger shift and probably a little bit more difficult for us to look at and do and change. So we want to start getting our minds wrapped around that now as we start utilizing that. All that comes into what is this continuous reinvention? We've often thought, hey, we reinvent, we continue to keep it fresh. When we're talking about technology that has releases nonstop, there is something here in which we have to be okay letting go of something we have maybe built and have a lot of pride in for what is new and out there that just came and was released, that allows us to have better customer service and allows us to take different market share for products and services. So it's a different way of thinking about our investments in our innovation cycles and who's doing what in that cycle. With that, I want to jump into the first thing I think everyone can jump in and do right now, and that is that learning. And some of this is tried and true what we know, but the end goal of what I hope you take away from this is we want people to walk away thinking about hacking their job. How can they use these tools to make their lives better and easier with technology? And there's some basic things like that. We always use the 70-20-10 model. There's nothing wrong with that. It might look a little bit different now. That 10% is that learning academy, making sure that you've got your responsible AI trainings and things like that are out there that everyone understands and have taken, as well as using your partners to keep the latest up on their tooling. So they will help you do some of that. The next is that the 20% is a different way we have found that's really been helpful, and that is implementing AI coaches within the organization. We have found that just turning it on doesn't mean people come. We're starting to see you'll start to see headlines of it doesn't work or it takes too much work. And it's because we haven't really figured out how to hack and play with it. So embedding AI coaches in teams and creating a certification program where you create your own AI coaches that keep up with the next technology that is coming that you'll implement helps sustain that. And that also helps sustain whatever prompts or agents that you might be having. And we end with the idea of 70% is on the job. And we found that the easiest way to do this is to have some fun with it. So we gamify it. And on this next slide, I'll show you a little bit of what we're talking about. We created bingo. We created tic-tac-toe for executives. One thing we found is executives and leaders that are using this have 5 times the adoption rate. So if someone talks to me about, hey, we're not using it, I always start with the leaders. Who's using it in your leadership team? So bingo works simply like you do all blackout bingo. And the goal here is, how do you start using this as part of your ways of working? We all know that once we start looking at your full value chain and figuring out where you want to automate and create agents, it'll be easier to understand where to use it. In the beginning, you're really assisting and augmenting your work with your chats, whatever chat and technology that you're choosing to use. So you work on your own throughout the week, pick a card, you come together as a team, and you show what your work was. What we found is the adoption rate skyrocketed. We saw huge increases in productivity within 5 weeks of doing this bingo challenge within teams. We've done it for Copilot. What ends up happening if you're doing this with coaches is those coaches end up creating their own bingo cards, department specific, so that you can really think about as you bring new people into your teams, that's the new onboarding, that's the new learning, how you get your work done now with this technology for those that maybe haven't been using it. With that, this all changes how we sort of think about our roles and what our roles are. And in this next slide, that role starts to look like, and I'm an 80s kid, so I often think about the Rubik's Cube. And it's the easiest way for me to think about how my role is shifting. So take the Rubik's Cube, I think about the reds all coming off, and we have a process in which we use some tooling, AI tooling we've created that's called Enhance IQ that allows us to either look at a role, a department, or an organization and understand where you might want to do augmenting work all the way through where you're going to automate and agentize to really make those use cases and figure out where you want to prioritize more strategically. But it allows you to go, okay, the reds pull off and they become my agent, or they become what I'm augmenting with. And then I add new skills and new tools. So that allows us to understand, okay, I need to start adding these tasks and these new skills that are uniquely human. And as you can imagine, and this is where we get to fluid organization models, you start to see we're going to go deeper in the human skills, and we're going to probably go across organizational boundaries. So you might, this is where we're going to start to see those silos starting to decrease and change. But if you're starting to think about how to think about your roles and your organization changing, always start with a Rubik's Cube. It helps a ton, I promise. With that, and this next slide, I want to dig into how do we help organizations get there? What we have found is 90% of leaders aren't ready. And they're not ready because this is a wholly different thing. We're going to, like 10, 15 years ago, say, we lived through that. This is very different. And it's ongoing and it's changing. And that really means we need a different skill set. And we need an adaptive skill set. And that's why we call this adaptive learning and adaptive leadership and adaptive organizations, and not a transformation. Often we've thought about transformations as a moment in time. This is just an ongoing iteration of what your organization and your leaders and your skills will be. So we've developed what we call an adaptive quotient. And to help us understand where, in this next slide, if we can dig into that where we're going to go into, where do we need to grow? So we believe that AQ will be the new EQ for leaders and for teams to understand where to go. And adaptability is more than resilience, and it's more than tenacity and grit. So we really built it out to start thinking about what are all the things that we need to think about to make sure we're taking the most out of and know where we need to grow from this technology for our organization. The first is sensing. So that is that understanding what is potentially possible and using more like scenario-based trainings and scenario-based thinking into what you're doing. The next is humility. That is that EQ. What got us here in our leadership skills and in our roles as leaders in organizations, this is going to be something wholly different. And so we're going to have the emotional intelligence to be a learner, not a knower in this, because we're all doing this the first time. It's going to be a different experience for all of us. The next is that intentionality. And that's really understanding where you want to go in your outcome. What is that 30-year view? And with that, paired with that is the fluidity of not caring how you got there. So if you built the beautiful product, but now your partner has a better product and you can use your resources on the next, you have to be willing to change that to get to that accelerated feedback cycle and be willing to do that constant reinvention. And then ending to be able to handle all that. That is the tenacity and the grit and the resilience to keep going as we continue to shift and change and learn. So shift is an AQ model that we use, and it's something that we think about. How do we grow this? What are the skills that we need to have as leaders in the future? With that, I want to leave you with the quote that was in the video, the one we started with today. And that is that anyone who isn't embarrassed of where they were last year probably isn't learning enough. I hope that you jump on the train and really dig into learning and be surprised every year about how far you've come along with this technology. With that, I'm excited to turn it over to Kevin. I think we have a little bit of time to do some Q&A and dig into some of the details.
Awesome. Thank you, Amelia, and thank you, Tamara, as well. Before we jump into Q&A, I see we've got 180 people out there still on the line, and this is a moment. Limber up the fingers, engage the keyboard. If you have questions, you have topics that are top of mind for you, hit that chat box, put the questions in there. We have 3 canned questions that we can go through, but I don't know about you. Every time I go to a webinar and they use canned questions, they aren't nearly as good as the live fire ones. So this is me inviting you, bring on the questions. But To get us started, Tamara, let's kick it off. Scaling AI past isolated use cases. We know that's a challenge. Everybody runs into it.
It
What do you
is.
see as the biggest barriers organizations face when trying to integrate AI at scale from different business functions?
I think it's this, kind of top-down approach. I think this bottoms-up approach where we put this technology at the edges of the organization with all of our people, with the skills of how to use it, and with the adaptability of how to transform their processes to collaborate and reach across functions to do that in a bottoms-up motion is, I think, the missing motion. I think, we're still very much, because we're figuring out the technology, trying to understand what is the architecture, what is the governance, what are the things that are more top-down decisions. And while those are important, we really have to find that scale, which is bottoms up.
The thing I know I'm not supposed to do is muting myself. I am far too trained on remote work and muting myself. All right. Here we go. See, I knew that getting those fingers limbered up would get this chat going. Let's see. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. So yes, I'm going to selectively jump to a few things. All right. James G, let's jump to you. If within a year, 100% or so of code will be generated by AI, what is the job market for software engineers going to look like? Whew, that's a juicy one. Amelia, as our org person, what do you think?
I think code will be written by bots and agents, and they'll create more code. I think that the role of the engineer will shift and will change. And I think that I see organizations having more pooled resourcing around projects that need to get done that have engineers in them, as well as your product teams and such, that sort of span the overall view. And I also believe that engineering will get to, and Tamara, you can probably correct me if you think I'm wrong, just a different level of the more complex in what is the right human ethical choices to be making in some of this work as well. I think I think all of our jobs, if we're going to be honest, in 10, 15 years are going to look different, and we have to be honest about that.
Yep.
We're going to pull out of the toil, and we're going to start to create and innovate and meet our customers' needs at a deeper level that we just don't have time to today.
Yep. Thank you both. There are a lot of questions in here asking specifics on where are we building agents, how are we building agents. The short answer, as any professional services firm will probably tell you, is we're building them on all of the things. We have some that we're building custom. We have some where we're using platforms off the market. I saw another question in there about, do we have advice? Where was this? Cheryl Carr, in addition to guiding internal AI development, do you also offer guidelines around use of vendor AI such as MS Copilot? Yes. So knowing that we're on a tight window here, we got 5 minutes. Here would be my request. We have lots of smart experts who can speak to those things and will happily go all the way deep with y'all. I think that I'll give you a quick passing thought on this idea of build versus buy, and am I building custom stuff or things off the market? If you are going to build custom, it needs to be something that's differentiated. It needs to be something with enduring value. It needs to be something that you can tap into your own data to get a truly different, better outcome than relying upon what's out there in the frontier models today. The off-the-shelf tools are increasingly incredibly powerful. So if your data is not in a place of being a strong foundation to truly extract value out of building it custom, or if you do not have a very sophisticated, strong engineering shop, over time, we are seeing more and more of the use cases that organizations are trying to tackle be able to be handled very adequately, if not greatly, by off-the-shelf tools. Okay. All right. Tamara's giving me a head nod, which tells me that is a good answer. And I will take it. Here we go. Amelia Sekar asks, what role do you think a process architect plays in an AI-enabled enterprise in workflow automation?
Tamara, do you want to jump into that one?
Oh, did I redirect it the wrong way?
Redirect.
See, look at that.
I know,
Teamwork.
I can see
Bing,
it jumping
bing,
out of
right
her
over
skin.
there. Let's go.
They're probably working with AI, to optimize processes, because AI is going to be our partner in everything. But I think that that process engineer, that BPR reinvention, reengineering process work of the like 90s and early aughts is going to come back in a bigger way. It just looks a bit different in that, we need to really look at what are the guardrails, right? Where is there more risk in some of our processes that we need to have, different ways of engineering intelligence into it? And where is there the ability to scale and speed with, little overhead or cost? And so technology is a bit different, but the outcome in terms of the value stream, that's the same. So I think our process people are pretty well set up for this agent shift.
Awesome. All right, Amelia, I think I'm going to be able to land this next question with you, and you can't duck it. So we're gonna see if I can direct appropriately. Will Fang asks, in some organizations, I noticed new roles of chief AI officer or even chief people and AI officer. What's your view on the roles of leading AI adaptations and transformation today and in the near future in 2 minutes or less?
I like, I've got a lot of opinions on this one. I think first and foremost, the AI for an organization, the CEO needs to get more engaged and involved. The CEO needs to know where he or she wants to take the organization 30 years from now, or else it's going to evolve without really some intention here. So I do think that it's a full C-suite. I think it makes sense if you want to have a role that is dedicated to thinking about implementing AI through your value chain and driving that initiative forward. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I could also see, your chief technology CIO with your CEO, with your chief people officer, really sort of that triangle implementing this. I mean, learning is completely different and new. It's not courses anymore. Everything sort of shifts on its side, so to speak. But I think it could be what works. I would also say that we're going to likely see some shrinking of C-suites in tenure. So I don't know that I would add a lot of roles unless you really see where you want to take your organization 5-10 years from now.
Awesome. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, everybody, for very vigorously adding to the chat. Challenge accepted, challenge crushed. Thank you. Okay, so expanding on the thank you, this is something that we love to have the opportunity to do with y'all. Having over 200 of you join us today is such a thrill, and I just want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope the deep dive that we provided into the 3 easy A's with AI, accelerated engineering, AI agents, and adaptive teams, sparked fresh ideas and gave you practical steps to move forward. Remember, AI isn't just another tech initiative. It's about reimagining how your entire organization operates and creates value. As you wrap up and move on to the rest of your day, think about one action you can take right away, whether it's launching a pilot, upskilling your teams, or simply starting a conversation with your peers about the power of AI. Whatever you choose to do, we're here to help. And if you want to talk strategy, implementation, or any of the insights we covered today, we're here. On behalf of Tamara, Amelia, and everyone at Slalom, thank you so much for your time and attention. Stay curious, keep innovating, and we look forward to continuing this journey with you. Take care. We'll see you soon.